Let's do this opening question, huh?
Okay.
Let me read this thing. I appreciate it for people sending these in. Support at Vodyssey.com. Make sure you send in your questions. We'll get them answered on the show. Here we go. I'm currently renovating a house and having Mike do design and full setup. My realtor also manages short-term rentals, so I was planning on having him manage, but when we sent him the contract, he wants to own the listing and have all funds sent to him, cutting me a check after expenses each month. This feels like a way to hold me hostage with him owning my listing. My other two short-term rentals, I own the listings and receive the funds from OTAs, and my co-host bill me each month, which I prefer. What are your thoughts on owning your listing versus your property manager owning your listing, and all reviews that would stay with them if you ever changed co-host/PMs? Thanks, Eric.
Okay, Eric, awesome question, and a very common one that we get all the time. We actually haven't had it for a minute, so I appreciate you sending it in. I will tell you before I answer in a long-winded way, I don't own any of my listings. And so I hire property managers on all my properties, and I don't own any of the listings. They own them. And so it is not uncommon for property managers so you're used to dealing with co-host. Usually the big difference between a property manager and a co-host is many states you have to be licensed to be a property manager. One of the big things that you have to be licensed for is to handle other people's money. And so property managers, like you mentioned, they own the listing, the money comes to them, and then they pay you at the end of every month. You're used to the co-host, which is going to be co-hosting with you. You own the listing, they're a co-host on it. They handle a lot of the duties and responsibilities of the property manager, but then what happens is the money comes to you, and then they send you a bill at the end of every month, you pay it out. So you're used to that relationship. Because of that, you're saying, hey, listen, I prefer that. And now, I don't think the property manager is going to hold you hostage. You're going to be, that is a normal way for property managers to do business. You're exactly right, though. If you change, you lose your reviews, you lose the listing, and you're going to be starting over with somebody else. Now, that, in my opinion, is not as big of a deal as most people make it. I've been operating this way for years. It's never been a massive problem for me. Usually we have really good property managers that we're going to be with for a long time. And if we leave them, it might be a little painful. We might have to start over, but usually I'm only leaving them if there's a problem. Most of the time, problems arise in the very beginning with a property manager. So I'm usually going to figure out those problems before I have a really good listing with tons of great reviews. If I have a good listing with a lot of reviews, that is, that's what I want the property manager to do. So why would I move on? Now, if you anticipate managing your own property in the future or being able to jump into the management side of it, then I might suggest more of a co-host relationship instead of a straight property management relationship, because a property manager, 9 out of 10 times, they're going to own the listing. Some of them will give you the option. And if it's important to you, you could say, hey, listen, I want you to property manage, but I want to own the listing, and then you can co-host it so that if something happens, I can keep that listing in those reviews. If a property manager is not doing their good job, many times you don't want that listing, because if they're not doing a good job delivering a great experience, you're going to get bad reviews. You're going to have a listing that you really don't want, right? You're going to say, hey, listen, I want to start over. And I've never felt like it's a big deal to start over. I've never felt like that's a massive, I can get those reviews really fast. I can get the momentum. We know exactly what it takes. We've got the blueprint. And so I don't really worry about that too much. And it is not a property manager versus a co-host relationship. That's going to be the biggest difference. Is the property manager most of the time is going to own the listing. Now, some of them will work with you. Some of them will say, hey, listen, I'm okay, I'm okay with you owning the listing. But also they may or may not be okay with that either, because of how they run their business with their standard operating procedures. They might say, hey, listen, we have a host account. It's already got a lot of a really good reputation. It's already got a ton of reviews in our hosting account. And so it puts us in an advantage when we start to bring other properties on within that account, right? And so they may, reviews are the lifeblood of the business. They're going to want those in their account as well. However, one of the things that we always say with our property managers, we have kind of 3 non-negotiables. One of them is, we want to pay for and own our own photos. And so if that listing if they keep the listing, they can't use your photos. Like whatever, like you're gonna not that they're gonna use your photos because it's the same property, but you have all the marketing assets, if you will, all the property photos that you invested in. We call them lifestyle photography, and so we're gonna create this immersive, articulate this story really, really well through lifestyle photography. I'm gonna own those, and so even if I have to go start over, gaining the first reviews and gaining that momentum is really not that big of a deal. So,
okay.
I think that people make a bigger deal of it than it is, or it feels like it's a bigger deal. Most of the time you have to think about strategically, why do you want to keep the listing if it is, hey, listen, I'm going to build up all these I'm going to have 100 5-star reviews. Well, if that's the case, you're probably not switching property managers unless you're going to pull it and you want to do it yourself. So if your long-term goal is to manage the property yourself, then maybe you want to own the listing. But if it's because, well, what if something goes wrong and I'm at odds with the property manager, or they're not doing a good job, and I want to keep that listing and it's got all those great reviews, well, if they're not doing a good job, you're not going to have a lot of great reviews, and you're usually going to find those problems out in the very beginning of that relationship with the property manager. If you have a problem, it's usually going to be in the first.
Okay, so in my opinion, this makes it sounds like maybe he's not like fully confident or comfortable in this person. I mean, if you trust this guy and he's got or woman and they have amazing reviews, it doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal to let him own it. Should he like interview him more, or should he try?
Possibly, and I think it's more the relationship he's had in the past where it's with co-hosts, and you're used to owning that listing. You're used to letting them be a co-host. Some property managers will do that. Maybe it's just as simple as asking.
Okay.
And you don't lose out on a good property manager. Yeah, if you already went through the interviews that we suggest, and you've already checked off all the boxes that we suggest, and then you see the contract that they actually own the listing, most property managers are going to operate that way.
Okay.
That is how most property managers operate. And the difference, and that's one of the big differences. I mean, it's usually the main difference is who handles the money on the front end. A property manager is going to be licensed in most areas to be a property manager. Like most states, you actually have to be, not every state, but most states you have to be licensed to be a property manager. And that means you're taking somebody else's funds, you're holding their funds, and you're going to pay them out, right? And so that's where they own the listing. It's tied to their bank account. The money comes in, and they send you your cut at the end of every month. A co-host relationship is the opposite. You own the listing. It's tied to your bank account. The money comes to you, and then the co-host sends you a bill and you pay them every month of what they were doing. That is the main difference. And the ownership of that listing, the reason they own the listing is because it's tied to their bank account. They're taking the money, everything else. And so accounting wise, it's just much easier for them. It's how their businesses are set up. They're licensed to do so. And so I've never found it a big deal. It's how I operate every single one of my properties. I've never owned my own listings. And I actually have one property manager that allows us to own our own listings, and we choose not to. We say, hey, just keep it under your account. You've got a great reputation. They're already super hosts. They've got a ton of 5-star reviews, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that we can kind of get a little bit of benefit from, especially in the beginning. And they do a great job.
Oh, wow. Okay, that answers it to me. In my opinion, I felt like that was fantastic. Yeah. Don't be too worried about it.
Yeah, it's not something I worry about. I don't think that it is that a lot of people I think worry about it on the front end. But think about where your worst case scenario is, and think about your long-term goals. I will say, if your long-term goal is to ultimately maybe own the listing and self-manage, and you're going to pull the management away, then maybe you go with a co-host, right?